The movie's opening scene shows the daily activities of a little family who appear to be having fun together. Elise, the wife of Craig, works as a real estate agent. Craig is a doctor. Craig and Elise must share chores, in turn, to care for their dear son Benjamin, age 6, because their daily routines are different. Elise must report to work, as usual, that morning, and Craig is taking care of Benjamin in his place. Craig invites Benjamin to play baseball with him in the backyard after his wife has left the house. Craig, however, goes back into the house first and gets Benjamin sunscreen after observing that the day's weather is starting to get warm. Unfortunately, he has no idea that a man in a car that is parked close to his yard has been watching Benjamin. As soon as Craig enters the house, the automobile slowly starts to approach the yard, and soon it is only a few meters away from where Benjamin is playing. Craig is searching a drawer in the house for a lotion from his wife's unorganized collection of cosmetics. He appears puzzled. He has no idea that he is about to undergo the most horrific incident of his life. Suddenly, he sees a man kidnapping his son. Craig pulls out his automobile and starts pursuing the kidnapper right away because he cannot keep up with the speed of the car. Craig experiences yet another roadblock despite his anxiety when, just as he is going to call the police, he discovers that his mobile was left in the house. At this moment, Craig believes there is only one thing he should do: independently pursue and find the kidnapper's vehicle. He then stops at a flyover, but once more regrettably, the kidnapper's automobile is no longer in view. As Craig attempts to stop every automobile one at a time to borrow a mobile, the situation in the traffic also grows hectic. However, he returns home and the police arrive. Elise, who has just arrived home from work, is immediately shocked to see that there are several police officers and reporters present at her home. Elise greets her husband as soon as she walks in the door, appearing to be prepared to ask him a question but saying nothing. Elise is asked to sit down and discuss the kidnapping of her child by a detective. Elise cries violently in search of her child since this just serves to increase her stress. After several hours have passed, the authorities have yet to learn the reason behind the kidnapping. Elise starts to question why the kidnapper has not gotten in touch with them yet to demand ransom money. At this time, she begins to believe that Benjamin was taken because of the actions of a person who enjoys the crime, or what is commonly known as a psychopath, rather than because they were motivated by money. While yelling for his parents, Benjamin, who has been locked in a basement chamber, yells in terror. John Kozlowski, a maniac, is aggravated by Benjamin's scream. As a result, John enters the room out of irritation and intends to kill Benjamin. After getting many reports from the neighborhood, 2 police officers named Patterson and Alvarez visit John's home later in the day. A few of the locals claim to have heard crying coming from John's basement. John now opens the door to his home without letting them inside to observe what is happening. Then he says that the voice is his and that he is now depressed. Alvarez, who was not pleased with John's reaction, makes an effort to learn whether John is a parent. John then replies that he is the only resident of the residence and that he is childless. Alvarez now believes that John is concealing something after discovering that there are children's clothes inside the home. John declines the request from the 2 of them, who are now acting suspiciously, to enter and look around the house. Instead, he again requests that the 2 officers present their search warrants. The 2 police officers are consequently forced to use stronger deterrence against him. They spend some time going around the house room by room before Patterson finds an entrance that goes to the basement. He only finds worn-out, unkempt old furniture as he enters the basement room. The policeman, though, is still convinced that there is a problem with the residence. Additionally, he discovers bloodstains and mismatched instruments smeared in blood, including drills, screwdrivers, and a hammer. Patterson is shocked to see Benjamin's lifeless body when he opens the door to another room. After that, Elise hears the phone ring and makes herself pick it up. It is awful for her to learn that Benjamin has been discovered dead and that Elise is unable to speak until her body weakly collapses. She and her husband are still holding out hope that the child is not Benjamin as they travel to the hospital. Craig and Elise, however, are forced to believe that the boy is indeed Benjamin once they get to the hospital. Their hitherto content life is completely upended in a couple of hours. The psychopath should be punished as harshly as possible. Craig and Elise try to seek justice. However, the outcome of the court is not what they were expecting, as John is only given a term of 25 years in prison. Following the judge's ruling on their case, Craig and Elise appear to be very upset and outraged. Craig tells Elise that shooting the offender will not make anything different when Elise asks for his assistance in getting a gun. Elise continues by saying that they have failed as parents and must take action to protect their son's dignity. After several days, Elise and Craig both are depressed. The problem worsens as they begin to lose interest in one another and frequently dispute over who should be held responsible. Elise finally decides to temporarily live with Craig in difficulty to relax. Craig appears to be in a state of desperation after his wife leaves. Eventually, Craig plans to inject something into his arm to end his life. However, he detects a whisper as Benjamin's picture appears, strengthening both his faith and his resolve not to commit that careless deed. It reminds him of a time when the 3 of them were still together, and he is reminded of how fortunate his small family was to live together and raise their beloved child. Then, something comes to Craig's thoughts, till a whisper starts to reappear in his heart and soul, starting a mode of retaliation. Now that their beloved child has died, he travels to his wife's home to bring her in and exact revenge. Craig and Elise initially start their action by traveling to the hospital where Craig is currently employed. Craig navigates the crowd of medical personnel. After that, he discovers an ambulance whose door is unlocked. Craig takes some medicine and puts it in a little bag after entering the ambulance. John Kozlowski will start the process of being transported to a more severely guarded prison the following day at a prison. On the other side, Craig and Elise sneak up on John, who is being led by the police, and follow the car to carry out their plan. The prisoner's vehicle brakes at a gas station on the route to a new jail. Then Elise exits the vehicle and walks into the convenience store, where they carry out their plan. The drive then resumes and they will continue to follow the prisoner car as they wait for the drug to react. Craig then catches up with Elise and raises disturbances to draw everyone's attention. Dr. Craig is so certain that the drug's adverse effects will be felt by police officers who take it, and their strategy works. The police officers exit the van. Then, with the prisoner in tow, Craig swiftly climbs into that automobile, pulling his wife's car up after him. Craig, who is traveling quickly as they near the forest's edge, hits a deer that is crossing directly in front of him. Fortunately, Craig only sustains a minor facial injury as a result of the collision. They then notice a prisoner laying on the ground covered in blood. When they look into John Kozlowski's condition, they find that he has fainted. They then take John to a plantation home. John is initially laid out on a table with his wrists and legs still restrained. When John starts to regain consciousness, Craig informs him that he will be given medication. By allowing the medicine to keep John awake for several weeks, it is conceivable that they will start torturing John and prevent him from dying. The following morning, Elise unexpectedly receives a call from Detective Berger. The investigator reveals that John had just escaped from the prisoner transport. Even though they are the ones who planned the tragedy, Elise acts startled when she receives the news. The detective regrets the police officer's carelessness as well. Craig's mind seems to be suffering from the death of his kid in the middle of the night, as images of Benjamin keep crossing his thoughts. Due to this, Craig decides to confront John once more to express his frustration. He then presses his cigarette into John's abdomen till he experiences severe pain. The next morning, Craig continues the torment by soldering burns from last night's cigarettes into John's stomach. Elise starts to feel horrible for what they have done to John at this point after hearing his screams of pain. But Craig tries to convince Elise that what they are doing is right. Craig appears dissatisfied and picks off where he left off by injecting something into John's neck. John will suffer due to the medicine. The sound of footfall on the plank floor above them startles them while they torment John in the basement again. It transpires that a man and his dog broke into the residence, and it turns out that the man is a local. The man tells Elise that the home is owned by Frank Joseph after becoming suspicious. Elise cleverly manages the circumstance by telling that she is a real estate agent who is currently watching for his customer to inspect the house. Fortunately, when Craig poses as a buyer and departs right away, the man believes it. One of the police officers tells Detective Berger that the prisoner transport van has finally been located. The detective arrives at the accident scene right away to investigate what happened. When John claims that he can only recall the prior car accident, Craig and Elise, who are torturing him once more, are shocked. As a result of the beating his skull experienced during the accident, he even claims that he does not recall who he is. Although they both start to feel bad for torturing the man, Elise is not willing to let him go since she is sure that he is just lying. Alice keeps trying not to accept what John is saying to them. They then attempt a solution by inflicting pain on John's leg and compelling him to utter their son's name. Later that evening, Elise awakens from her sleep. John is struggling to free himself in the basement at the same time. He finally succeeds in getting free. He then proceeds to leave by going upstairs, but as he exits, Elise, who is seated on the toilet, is startled by the sound of the bedroom door gently opening. She is terrified and in a panic, but all she can do is stare at her sleeping spouse. She will have to try to attack the man behind the toilet at this point. John is struck unconscious by Elise as she walks slowly while holding an iron pipe in her hands. When Craig is abruptly awakened, they swiftly return the man to the basement. Sadly, the man abruptly awakens once more, and he kicks Craig down the steps to fight them off. He rushes away from the scene rather than attacking Elise. On the other side, the police are searching the neighborhood close by. Fortunately for them, they can track down and capture John, who is attempting to flee. At this time, everything is disclosed, and it becomes clear that the man being detained is John Kozlowski, who would receive a 25-year prison term for killing a kid. The major issue is that Patrick Galligan, another guilty participant who was previously sentenced to 18 months in prison for tax fraud and evasion, was found in the van that was earlier kidnapped. As you can see, this is the person who was supposed to reside in that home with Craig and Elise during the day. When Craig and Elise arrive at the scene of the guy's suicide, they are horrified to realize that he had hanged himself. They also find a note that the man had scribbled on a piece of paper. The individual, who turns out to be Patrick Galligan, admits that he is deeply despised and apologizes for it. He claims that he is deserving of everything they have done to him, but he is at his limit, so he decides to commit suicide. Even though Craig and Elise are aware of this, they are shocked to learn that their attempts at vengeance have failed since Patrick Galligan, not John Kozlowski, is the one who killed their kid.